Yeah, my apologies for the strict time frame because we're not just here, we're also online and people log in for these sessions. So we try to keep it a tight schedule, which is always a little bit difficult if you have passion for something, talking about that. So thank you all for your efforts to create the presentations and speaking here today. Maybe to get some discussion started, as we've seen, maybe a little bit more than in the first part of this show. We saw that there was a lot of emphasis on creating standards, instruction, and tips and such. So for most of you, and yeah, it seems to be still a challenge to get people mobilized on BIM and keep them focused within a specific company already. And maybe even if you are in the collaborative approach, there's even on another level a sort of discussion. So how do you see yourself in a wider team? Is that something that you could maybe have a say on? If it's compatible, your processes and your methodologies, do they align with other stakeholders as well? Or clients for that matter? Okay, yes, both.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on the project that you're working on and the client that you're working with. So we have a set of standards that we have developed for the studio. If the client doesn't come to us with any kind of information requirements for the project, then we have our own kind of set standard of information that we would need to develop for a project that where the client hasn't given us a requirement. But then obviously, if that requirement comes to us from the client directly, I guess there's a bit of a negotiation there about whether the requirement is appropriate for kind of the stage of the project that we have scope to design, and whether we need to kind of cut back on that requirement and have some kind of negotiation within the contract to say whether, for example, do we actually need Kobe at stage 2, for instance? Can we cut that out and maybe leave it till after the design has settled to a point where we can start to look at those types of information requirements for the project?
You mentioned Kobe, right, in stage 2, but do you feel that maybe that's then an unfair requirement, or it's based on maybe perhaps a lack of experience of asking a too specific requirement in a certain phase, or how do you see that negotiation? Do you feel it's an invalid request from customers or clients, or?
I think it depends on the amount of information that they're asking for at that stage, and whether it's appropriate for kind of a design phase, a design stage, which is where we would normally kind of sit within a project. So yeah, there's a little bit of kind of back and forth there with the client to help them if they need some understanding of the amount of information that we would normally provide in a design project, and whether that's appropriate for what they need.
Yeah, it's a little bit the same. Usually the requirements are more related with coding and the outputs and how they want to present the output, for example, the title blocks. But the procedures and the way we are doing the work does not change a lot. And of course, there's that discussion in the beginning to settle all the work that are being developed. But usually it's not a problem, because we try to organize our standards also in the way that others are doing, in the way that industry is walking to. So it ends up to be kind of the same thing for everyone, I believe.
Here's what I've noticed. A lot of clients will come back to us with very definite expectations of what their documents should look like. It could be that there are certain retail organizations, there are manufacturing entities, and they will come back to us with things like view naming conventions. They will come back to us with sheet naming conventions, which may be completely different from what it is that we're doing. Also, it depends upon the amount of information. that the owner wants to see on their sheets. For instance, a retail project. I've worked on retail projects that are really equipment heavy, and they need to see things like a detailed schedule of equipment, which shows certain kinds of equipment, does not show certain kinds of equipment, and things like that. Also, there are some owners which may be really, really techno-savvy, in which case they may ask us to use a version of the software that we have not deployed yet, and which we do not intend to deploy just yet. So, for instance, my company, we have a standard to upgrade our software every alternate year. But you know what? There may be an owner that comes in that says, I want my project in Revit 2023. So guess what? We hustle and we do it. Similarly with families, the families will need to be customized to regurgitate the kind of information it is that the owner requires to see on their sheets.
Well, thank you.
No, completely agree with everything that's been said so far. I suppose just in terms of the customizing to the client's needs versus the sort of in-house standardization, I like to think that about 80 to 90% of the workflow can be fixed in terms of the production of information, and then there's that 10 to 20% element of how does the information get taken in, what does the naming procedures look like, and then how does that information get delivered out in terms of the CDE that then is specific to client. And then once you do start building up a project portfolio, or clients come back with pre-projects, then it can be quite clear what specific requirements they need, or you can start to tailor to that type of client. And then you might be standardizing across all projects, but you might be standardizing across particular typologies of projects.
Okay, so yeah, maybe we can also have a look at the audience if there was maybe some questions that were, I see 2 hands even, so I can give you the mic.
You first.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for the talks today. My name is Sean. I'm from an MEP contracting firm at Dornan Engineering. And I had a very specific question, probably for you, Teresa. Could you give us some suggestions for...
Could you,
it up?
It's not that
Hello.
audible yet. Yeah.
Could you give us some suggestions for family management? That's a Revit family management now.
You're asking me for suggestions about family management. Is that it? Okay. One thing that I find very important, and especially regarding efficiency, is that usually people have their families organized in a folder with all the families dumped in the folder. That's not efficient. The best thing you should do is have the Revit file with a showcase with your families and organized by topics. Doesn't make sense to have one file because people will also waste lots of time finding the families. Then again, having your shared parameter file organized also by topic to make it easier to import the parameters when you are making new families. I don't want to advertise anything, but you can use D-roots. I don't know if you are familiar. They are Portuguese, by the way. Because if you have your shared parameter files organized in groups and by topics, when you import the parameters, you can import the ones you need at once. So you are, again, gaining time. We also have the attention to make sure that in our template, we have already all the shared parameters and all the schedules, of course, are connecting with all our families. We do not use web families. That's forbidden. Everything we use is done by us because we want to import a family, not be worried, and make sure that it's already connecting with our schedule. For example, if we want a cove, a lot of people model cove with ceilings or with small walls. No, we have a family that already has the formula to get the quantity takeout. So it's small things, and it doesn't take you a lot of time to make that simple family, but it will gain you a lot of time. So I'm not sure if
No, that was
you
perfect.
the answer,
Thank you very
but
much.
you can get my contact and you can keep in touch.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Hi, how are you? I'm Daniel. I'm from Dornan too. So, yeah, can you hear me?
Very bad.
Yeah. Well, I'm Daniel. I'm BIM developer for the same company, for Dornan. There is a question that I'm trying to find for a long time. Talking about automation, so we have Dynamo, Revit, C#. So my question is, like, Python is really strong language, but should we spend time trying to improve Revit and Python in Dynamo when we have a good knowledge of C#?
So our first step was to use Python because it would be the quicker way from jumping from Dynamo, and also with the node of Python inside Dynamo. It would be the easier and the quickest way from jumping from Dynamo, that was not good enough, to programming and to having your tools. But we are aware that C# is going to be a more stable solution. So now we are studying that and trying to invest and to translate all our scripts to C#. So I believe C# is the answer, but especially for someone that is not a programmer. I'm not a programmer, I'm an architect. So I already believe it was a huge step to start programming. Python was a good first step, and now when I have to work in Dynamo, it's a mess because I think, oh my God, this would be a line in Python. So I encourage people to start with Python if they want to start developing their own tools, which are very important. There is no way of going away with it if you want to get to the next level of BIM.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Keep the mic close,
yeah. Hi, thank you all for the presentation. I heard a lot about the standards, and they are, like, seems very well developed. But my question would be, like, they haven't born like that. Like, you are developing the standards by the, now it's gone. Yeah, you develop these standards by the time, and how do you manage the change? Sometimes you say, oh, this particular procedure is not necessary anymore, is on the way, and then you have to remove, or then someone, like, how do you manage this change and developing your standards and, like, removing and adding new features?
I don't know if the question was for me, but I'm going to answer it anyway, and then I can move the mic. Coming from an office that is working for 40 years, there have been a lot of development. So we needed to go through all the stages and all the evolutions. So we are aware that we need to do it, and our procedures are always in constant change. So what we do is okay, now we have this new procedure. In the next project, we'll test it, and if it works, we start using it. So it's not a closed thing. It's impossible to be with technology. So I think that's a very natural thing.
Let me tell you a story about standards being changed. When I started at Fishbeck, I inherited a template that was built in 2012. So for me, the first priority was to rebuild the template from the ground up, to match up with Revit 2022. Now, the level of complexity over here is that we would have half a dozen disciplines working on the same project. We needed to make sure that all the sheets from each discipline looked exactly the same. So first of all, we had this big get-together, this big meeting, where we discussed what our new template needs to be. The bottom line was that all the templates for each discipline needed to be graphically similar. And then once everything is graphically similar, then every discipline can do things the way that they need to. So we came up with a seed. Once the seed template was developed with common features, we had text, line weights was a bear, fonts, all of that already set up. Then it was farmed out to the other disciplines, and then we went ahead and we plugged in all of our view templates, our sheets, mocked up everything, and we basically tried to make things as cut and dried as possible to make it easy for the team. So we would have designer notes, instructions on each mocked up sheet, so that even a newer hire, when they get into a project, they would find things easier and would have fewer questions to reach out to us with. once all of the disciplines were pretty much on a common page, we rolled out the template, let the team know, gave them, we had an informational session to inform the team about the new features of the template. And then from then on, all new projects were to be developed with that new template. So it's all about communication, making sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody receives the proper information for any new changes, any new innovations to be rolled out and brought into use by our team. I hope that was helpful.
Thanks again, guys. Just a quick question on training for a multidisciplinary practice. In our company, there's structural engineers, there's an architectural team, mechanical team, electrical team. We found that the architectural discipline is much more developed in our standards, in our families, in training. And we're trying to kind of bridge the gap to the other disciplines. What would you recommend the hierarchy to be to just for more inclusion, more collaborative kind of approach to the standards and workflows, procedures, etc., across all the teams within one organization? Would it be like BIM manager or BIM office manager, coordinators, BIM modelers, or and how often would they meet and discuss kind of procedures and so it's not just singular. Basically that. How would you manage training across multidisciplinary practice?
Okay, I have the mic, so. One of the things that we've implemented is that we have a very active intranet. So one of the things that the BIM, now every department has got their own BIM lead. So what we do is we write up documentation. So let's say I've made a change in my project template. I know that change happens almost every month or so. I document it. I shoot out an email to the entire team, and then I take the material from the email, throw it onto the intranet. So everybody knows where the information is. They've received the information. If they have questions, they can come to me. In addition, for new hires, we have got training modules provided to us by a third party, and it's just Revit basics. Now, after a few days of working on designated modules, then the new hire is thrown into a new project with the understanding that all lines of communication are open. They can contact me any time of the day or night, email, phone call, Teams message, but it's my responsibility to make myself as open to them as possible. I love sharing my screen with them and showing them exactly what needs to be done.
Shall I? I mean, I guess for ourselves, our disciplines stretch across kind of architecture, landscape, and interiors, which I guess you could say is multidisciplinary in that way. We also do product design as well, which is less kind of BIM orientated. But I would say that what we try to do is set up forums within each of those groups at regular intervals. So, for instance, every month we have a digital delivery forum with, I guess, advanced BIM users or BIM leads that we have on each of those within each of those domains. And within those forums, we then kind of divest any new tools that we might have been working on or developing within our kind of toolbar set. We kind of demonstrate what those new functionalities are, new improvements, and then we get them to test those on the live project once we feel that tool is ready to kind of be used. And also we kind of give them updates on any kind of new standards as well. So kind of in terms of overall training strategy, similarly to what Rihas said, we have basics training for kind of across the entire organization that we have quarterly. So we give teams, we give individuals opportunities to learn Revit, even if they're not using it on a project. They may not have picked up Revit before. We have a lot of Rhino users within the studio. when they join us. We kind of say that we want to employ great designers first, and then we can teach them the tools if they need to move on to a Revit project. So we give them the opportunities to kind of pick up the software if they've never used it before. And then on projects themselves, we also have in place structured training at the right time for when they need to use that tool on the project as well. And we're also, it's an iterative thing, because at the moment we're kind of developing further training for, say, project managers in BIM, so that we can look at more kind of how they can be more aware of contractual requirements in terms of BIM, rather than just giving it to the BIM manager and saying, can you sort that out? We want them to have an understanding of those standards as well, so they know what they're letting themselves in for when they sign the contract.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, just 1 minute. So at our office, it is very fluid. In Portugal, it's not very used to have architectural running in the same space than the other disciplines. So we only have architecture and interior design. In our architectural team, I am the BIM manager, we have our BIM coordinators and the architects that are modeling. I mean, if there are any change, usually, if you are at the office, because we work mostly at the office, we join in my desk and we chat about it. We change ideas, and if we agree on that, and we test it, okay, we implement it, then we document it, and then we share with the rest of the team. Another thing very important, for example, when we are recruiting, most of the times we would rather to hire someone that does not know Revit. Because most of the time, people who knows Revit are doing it wrong, and they're not willing to change the way they are working. So we'd rather hire someone that doesn't know anything, and that will receive only the knowledge in the way we want. For example, we have weekly training, and we record everything. So we have a folder with all of our sessions that are available for the new hires when they come in. They need to watch all the recordings that are structured by themes. And we also have exercises that they need to finish before getting into a project. We need to make sure that they are working in the same page. And I think that's something very easy to do. For example, we started recording the sessions during the pandemic because we needed to go home to work, and we were using Skype. And then we thought, okay, if we are making this training on Skype, why don't we just record it? And then we start recording the sessions, and it turned to be very useful because I don't need to be repeating myself all the time. It's very simple, everyone can do it, and I think it's a good idea. Sorry.
So yeah, maybe we can conclude that there's multiple ways of trying to keep that live and share the knowledge about that. But I also want to cut into the subject of, well, it's actually pretty... it's a shame that it needs to be enforced in this manner, of course, because we're talking about extracts or deliverables that need to be represented in a certain way. And being a BIM-centric person myself, I think the data is in the model, and you could actually query the model at any point in time. And if it's red, green, or with dashed lines or whatever, it's just a representation that it's a requirement. But it's more of an administrative process only, almost, to a point, well, okay, you want to have it in that shape. But the data is centric, and it's much more flexible if it's all in the model and not only on drawings. So I think that should always be a requirement, that the data is hosted in the model, and it can be represented on multiple facets. Being a consultant for over 25 years, I help a lot of people also trying to get BIM adoption going. And I always ask them, well, give me your latest model based on your latest templates. And the answer was always, well, we have a model, but it's from 2 months ago, and it's based on our old template. So if you just wait 1 month, then we have a model that's based on the newest template. So, and that keep recurring in, yeah, you have continuous improvements on trying to adopt a new feature from a new version, or trying to be more effective, or lessons learned from the past and skip a few steps. So there is always a better model, I think. And there's always room for improvement. But I think, yeah, the key thing is to keep the data as much as possible in the BIM file, so that you can be flexible for any kind of request that you get in the future. And of course, there are multiple requests, even on a little bit higher level, on what do you actually capture in your models. There's more talk about golden thread or safety, health and safety requirements that we also want to query the model for, or progress or 4D, 5D timelines that you can have a sort of universal query on the model. So there's more in the model, I think, than is currently asked just specifically on drawings. And yeah, I think we should always be aware that that's the opportunity that we all have in BIM. So I see a red screen, so our time is up. Thank you again, all, and yeah, have a good rest of the day.